We are back for a new school year. I asked you in the spring what you would like to get from this podcast. So in this episode, I'm excited to share with you how we'll be changing up the podcast episodes just a little so that they are exactly what you are looking for and need as you approach your teaching. So let's jump in. Are you a language teacher looking for some reassurance that what you're doing in the classroom is on the right track? Or maybe you're looking for some ways to teach even more effectively. If you're one or the other or somewhere in between, you've landed in the right place. This is the World Language Classroom Podcast with your host, me, Joshua Cabral. You're about to get tips, tools, and resources so that your students continue to rise in proficiency and communicate with confidence. Let's jump in. Vamos, allons-y. Hello, my friends. Bonjour, mes amis. Hola, mis amigos. Welcome to the World Language Classroom Podcast. I am Joshua Cabral, and we are heading into yet another school year. So welcome back to the podcast. Hopefully, over the summer, you had some opportunities to listen to the summer Headspace episodes where you have a chance to go back and listen to some episodes from the previous year and learn some new stuff, be reassured about some things, but now it is time to jump into another school year. So this is the first episode after the summer. So I wanted to talk to you specifically about some of the things I learned from the survey that I sent out in the spring, things that I learned from you, the listener, about what you really want on this podcast, what has been working well for you, maybe some modifications and all of that. But my goal with this podcast is to continue to support language teachers on your professional journey. That is my number one goal, is I want to support you in everything you're doing in your classroom. And in that recent listener survey, I asked for some very specific things from you and about you so that I can shape this podcast to be exactly what it is that you want. So I wanted to share with you some of the things I learned from it that you shared with me and how I am going to respond to that in this next year of episodes. It is so important to understand your audience, their behavior, their preferences, how they're responding. You can hear things on social media and get emails and all of that. But when you do a survey where you get hundreds of listeners to put their input into the survey, you gain a lot of knowledge about things. So the first question I asked is, what language do teachers teach that are listening? And wasn't really a surprise to me that over 60% were Spanish teachers and almost 30% are French teachers. But then one of the surprising things was the number of English and ESL teachers, which is about 15% of you. And then in addition to that, there were Italian teachers, Chinese teachers, Portuguese, Arabic, Japanese, Hebrew, German, Tagalog from the Philippines, Dutch, Latin, Maori from New Zealand. And that made up about 12% of you that are listening, those languages as well. And then a number of methods instructors that are in universities and working with teachers as well. So that was really good to get this idea of who's out there on the other side that are listening. And then I asked where you're listening. Again, not surprising that over 50% of you are listening in your car. And when you're doing other activities, that was about 40% of you. So that doesn't mean that you only listen in your car or only when you're doing something like taking a walk, because you could choose multiple answers for that. But what that does show me is that if you're driving or you're taking a walk, that's what we do with podcasts. That's the beauty of it, because it's not video. You can be doing other things while you're listening. So that's a reminder to me that you're probably not in a place where you can write something down. So I have to make sure that the show notes are detailed, that they have the links that you need to get back to things. So again, that showed me that you're not in a place where you're writing things down or can. So I want to make sure that the episodes give enough information where maybe you don't even have to go and look for something else, that you get everything you need just from listening. Then the big takeaway I got from this survey was the length of episodes. And if you've been listening for, over 100 episodes now, they tend to go about 35 to 40 minutes when I have a guest, and single episodes when it's just me, they're usually about 25 to 30 minutes. But what I found in the survey is that 90% of you want episodes that are between 20 and 30 minutes, which the vast majority were about 25 minutes. And only 10% of you said, sure, go over 30. So that was very useful information to me. So I'm going to make sure that episodes don't go over 30 minutes and that they try to stay around 25, 26, 27 minutes, because that is what the survey said back to me that you're all looking for. So thank you for giving me that information. I'm almost thinking that maybe the majority of people are listening in their car during their commute, and their commute is 20 to 25 minutes. So that's kind of the sweet spot. I also asked about where you are hearing about the podcast or where you first discovered it. Almost 30% of you said it was through email, through the email newsletter that I send out. And then 20% of you found it through a Google search. So that's great to know it's coming up through Google. About 17% of you said it was from Facebook, whether that's in my Facebook group or my Facebook page. But then 15% of you said that you heard about it from a friend or a colleague. That is so important, and that means more to me than anything. The word of mouth, that you're listening to this podcast, you're hearing something, and then telling a colleague or a friend about it, there is nothing better than that. So if you do have a friend or a colleague that you think would benefit from listening to this podcast, please do tell them, because that is going to be way more impactful and alluring to them than seeing it on Facebook or in an email. Then I asked about different topics that you would like to hear about, and I got hundreds of topics out there, and I was able to kind of put them together. For the most part, it came down to really actionable things that you can do in your classroom. I pretty much figured that out because things that are up in the theory world are not great. Some of the feedback is that listeners do like that I am really pressing guests sometimes to go really into the details of how they do something so that you can really do it in your classroom. So I will continue to do that. And when I do episodes where it's just me talking about things, then I also will continue to make sure that I go really into detail so that you can do these things in your classroom. So some of the topics that were requested that I will definitely focus on for episodes in the fall and winter this year are organizing and delegating tasks in your classroom, maximizing efficiency in your classroom, standards-based grading, and then enhancing assessment and feedback, effective unit and lesson planning. And I'm going to make sure that I do these on solo episodes, but also that we will do it with guests I will bring on, because that's important to not just have a single viewpoint and to be able to have a conversation about it, because we all have different conversations in our classrooms with our students. We have different teaching scenarios that we're in. So it helps to bring in those different points of view. In the coming months, there are an exciting lineup of guests that I will have on the podcast. We'll be talking about AI tools, which has been a big request, looking at cultural reflection techniques, how to use guided conversations, chat mats. Those are huge in the classroom right now. Taking on challenging topics, how do we navigate that? SEL, social emotional learning, and mindfulness. Looking at spiral review, and also teaching content in the target language. Those are just some of the topics that are going to come up with some of my guests. And then the most exciting thing that came out of the survey was I asked if listeners would be interested in hearing coaching episodes where I talk to teachers about an issue they're having in their classroom or something they'd like to do better, and to talk through and coach through how to take on that challenge and do something about it in the classroom. And 85% of you that responded to the survey said that you would definitely be interested in that. And then as a follow-up, I said, would you also be interested in being on an episode with me? And so many of you sent me your name and your email, and I have already recorded a number of these episodes that you'll be hearing in the fall. And I'm calling these leveling up episodes. And they are 25-minute conversations with teachers about something that's happening in their classroom. And the way I'm looking at this is there's the theory out there and go and try this. And we often hear from guests and from me, we talk about the successful stuff in our classroom. Of course, we're going to do that, right? And it's to inspire you to go in your classroom and do it. But with these coaching episodes, it is really from a standpoint of true reality in the classroom. So yes, you're trying out this stuff, but what are the hurdles that you're coming across? And let's look at some ways of moving beyond them. So some of the topics that come up in the coaching episodes that you'll hear are assessing writing, implementing IPAs, like what are the challenges that come up with that, designing daily lessons from a unit plan, looking at behavior issues, and then balancing district assessments with a proficiency-based classroom. These are all things that happen in our own classrooms, and a lot of times we're sort of in a silo of trying to figure it out. Maybe we can talk to colleagues about it, but through these coaching episodes, I'm using Jim Knight's framework for coaching teachers, and that's the impact cycle, really getting into what truly the issue is, and then what's contributing to it, and then some suggestions for working through that challenging area. So that is the format of these episodes. So it's really emphasizing the practical insights and real world application. So if you would like to join me on one of these coaching episodes, there's a link in the show notes. You can put your info in there and I will get in touch with you and we will figure out the logistics with it. If you're not really sure, listen to a couple of the episodes that will be coming out. There will be one each month. So you might listen to one and say, oh, there's an area where I would like to improve a bit. So it would be really helpful to have a conversation about it. And I would really enjoy the opportunity of having that conversation with you. So based on all that feedback that I got from you, I will be modifying a bit, specifically with the types of episodes. So you will hear probably 1 to 2 episodes a month that will be just me, Joshua, talking to you about things in the classroom. There will be usually 1 guest a month, and then there will be 1 coaching episode each month that you can look forward to. And I will stay committed to maintaining that 25 to 30 minute time frame and making sure that everything that you hear is actionable ideas for immediate use in your classroom. So thank you very much to each and every one of you that participated in the survey. It is really helping to shape how we are going forward with the podcast. I'm incredibly excited about this upcoming school year and all the growth of the podcast and continuing to support you in your language teaching. I want to make sure that I am equipping language teachers with practical tools and strategies. That's really what it comes down to. And if you didn't get a chance to tell me what you want to hear about in the survey, you can always send me an email, joshua@wlclassroom.com. Send me a message through any of the social platforms. We can talk that way as well. But always reach out. Let me know what it is you need, what you want. And if you want to be a part of the podcast, you can always reach out. You can be a guest and we can talk about something that's happening in your classroom, or we can do a coaching episode as well. Both are very useful for teachers. So be sure to check out the show notes where you will see the links to sign up for a Leveling Up coaching episode or to be a guest on the podcast. And you can also click on the link to get Talking Points, my weekly email newsletter with tips and resources for language teaching that is still going strong for about 6 years now. And there's also, of course, the link to get in touch with me if you would like to work together either in person in your school or remotely. In addition to just the coaching episodes, we could do some work with perhaps your entire department. And again, that can be in your school or we can do it remotely. So I look forward to hanging out with you, whether that's in the car, taking a walk, wherever you are when you're listening to this podcast. I will talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the World Language Classroom podcast. Be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening so that you never miss an episode. Let's keep the conversation going on social media. Connect with me on X, aka Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram WL Classroom. And for even more valuable resources, visit my website, WLClassroom.com, where you'll find over 300 blog posts about language teaching. So stay inspired, keep growing, and continue making a difference in your language classroom.